Across the world's oceans, networks of hydrophones record a constant tapestry of low rumbles, shifting currents, and distant echoes produced by natural geological processes. Most of these sounds remain predictable and consistent, shaped by tides, volcanic vents, and the migration patterns of known marine species. Yet hidden within this underwater noise floor exist rare acoustic signatures that defy classification. These signatures rise suddenly from the depths, lingering in frequencies where no natural organism is known to operate. They resemble anguished cries, prolonged wails, or guttural resonance patterns unlike anything produced by whales or seismic fractures. The first of these sounds reached scientific archives entirely by accident. A hydrophone array stationed to monitor submarine traffic captured a long, rising tone that persisted for over 40 seconds. The tone entered from the edge of the system's detection radius and grew gradually louder until it saturated the lowest range of the sensors. The acoustic structure of the tone included harmonic bands spaced irregularly, forming a pattern that did not match any known biological or mechanical source. Its amplitude suggested a source so large and so deep that the energy required to produce the sound would exceed the capabilities of any known marine life. When analysts applied spectral shaping tools to the recording, a strange detail emerged. The core of the sound contained oscillations that fluctuated in precise intervals. These oscillations resembled pulses from a living organism rather than continuous geological resonance. The regularity within the chaotic scream implied internal structure. Some researchers propose that the sound originated from a creature capable of modulating its own anatomy in order to generate acoustic pressure far beyond the range of whales. Shortly after this initial phenomenon, a second acoustic event occurred thousands of kilometers away. This event produced a shorter scream-like signature with a descending structure rather than a rising one. Unlike whale calls, which decay smoothly, this sound ended with an abrupt drop in frequency that resembled a collapsing pressure chamber. The sound propagated across deep water layers until it reached the continental slope, where it reflected upward and became distorted. For several minutes afterward, residual vibrations persisted along the sea floor, indicating that the source had interacted with sediment layers. As recordings increased, patterns of these screams emerged across multiple ocean basins. Some lasted as little as a second, others extended for nearly a minute. All shared several peculiar characteristics. They occurred exclusively in regions beyond 5,000 meters. They appeared in clusters that repeated roughly every 6 to 11 years. They originated from moving sources that traveled faster than known marine species. They produced resonance waves that altered chemical gradients within the water. These details suggested a living origin, yet no known organism possessed the anatomy or energy budget required to create such overwhelming sound. The most puzzling element came from amplitude analysis. The energy in the largest scream-like recordings indicated a creature with a mass far greater than blue whales. If such entities existed, they would inhabit depths beyond human exploration, moving through an environment where pressure could crush nearly all known life forms. In one of the most striking cases, a long-form scream recorded in the northern Pacific exhibited a resonance decay that aligned with internal cavity structures similar to enormous acoustic chambers. This discovery suggested that the creature responsible possessed hollow or semi-hollow internal regions capable of vibrating at extremely low frequencies. Such cavities would need to withstand pressure exceeding 700 atmospheres, implying adaptations unlike anything known to biology. The sound included a peculiar modulation pattern. Every 7 seconds, the amplitude shifted slightly, producing faint additional harmonics. These harmonics propagated laterally rather than vertically, traveling along the thermocline. The propagation pattern resembled deliberate signal encoding. Some researchers began to consider the possibility that the screams served as a form of communication between colossal deep-sea entities separated by vast distances. Further evidence came when multiple hydrophone networks registered synchronized scream-like pulses across 3 ocean basins within a single 40-hour period. The sounds did not match one another exactly, yet they shared harmonic similarities that implied a shared biological origin. These synchronized events suggested a coordinated behavioral cycle, possibly linked to environmental factors hidden within the abyss. Even more unusual was the behavior of marine life following these events. After the recorded screams, fish migrations shifted abruptly. Certain pelagic species descended deeper than normal. Swarms of plankton dispersed without clear reason. Some deep-diving animals altered their routes entirely, avoiding specific corridors for months. These environmental reactions confirmed that the screams possessed energy levels capable of influencing surrounding life. Chemical probes deployed shortly after one acoustic event detected unusual concentrations of dissolved gases rising from the abyss. The gases included trace compounds associated with geothermal vents. Yet no vent fields existed in the region. This suggested that the creature responsible for the scream had disturbed deep sediment layers, releasing pocketed gases through movement or vibration. As more data accumulated, researchers focused on 4 primary types of scream, like anomalies. The first type featured long rising tones. The second type featured steep descending signatures. The third type remained steady with dense harmonic layering. The fourth type consisted of abrupt explosive pulses detectable only through their aftershock-like reverberations. Each type likely corresponded to a different behavioral state. Yet the nature of these states remained speculative. The sounds might indicate territorial claims. They might signal mating behavior. They might communicate environmental conditions, or they might represent a warning, broadcast across the deep as a reaction to threats or changes within the abyss. The origin zones of these sounds provided additional insight. They occurred most frequently near submerged mountain chains and trench systems that connected to ancient geological structures. Many sounded from near-extinct volcanic arcs and deep fault clusters. These geological intersections provided stable thermal and chemical gradients that could support immense biological structures. One of the most chilling fragments came from an array near the Mariana system. The recording captured a layered moaning sound that built in volume for nearly a full minute. Near the end of the recording, the tone shifted abruptly, producing a violent ripple across the water that caused sensors to overload. The amplitude of the final second exceeded all known biological calls. After this event, plankton density in the region collapsed. Sediment clouds rose from the trench corridor for several days, obscuring remote cameras. No physical organism was seen, only the sound, and it continued to echo across the water long after the source had moved on. Across the world, researchers confronted a single unsettling question. What is producing these screams in the deep? And why are the calls growing more frequent with each passing year? As hydrophone archives expanded, a more intricate acoustic map of the ocean emerged. The terrifying scream-like events were no longer rare scatterings across deep water. Instead, they formed repeating corridors of activity running along ancient structures of the sea floor. These corridors cut through trench systems, skirted submerged volcanic arcs, and followed continental fractures that had existed since before the rise of mammals on land. Their persistence suggested that the scream-producing entities navigated the planet according to patterns etched into the crust itself. One of the earliest confirmations of such aligned movement came from hydrophones stationed along a deep transition zone near the Philippine Sea. During a period of relative tectonic silence, the array detected a series of screams that rose steadily in pitch before collapsing into silence. Each scream originated from a slightly shifted location, forming a line that extended across a submerged ridge. When the full sequence was mapped, it revealed a perfect arc that mirrored the shape of the ridge. This implied that the organism responsible maintained a fixed height above the geological structure, following its contours with remarkable precision. The sound profile deepened the enigma. The rising portion of the scream showed increasing amplitude in precise increments. The collapse at the end of the sound abruptly erased the harmonic ladder entirely. Such behavior could not be explained by echo patterns or distance variation. Instead, it resembled a biological chamber rapidly altering its shape before expelling internal pressure through a sudden contraction. Nothing known in the oceanic biosphere possessed such controlled anatomical modulation. Further analysis indicated that these screams interacted directly with sediment layers. After each scream event, sensors recorded soft shock waves traveling through the sea floor, much like faint seismic ripples. These waves carried insufficient energy to produce structural damage but revealed a consistent signature that resembled biological resonance rather than geological vibration. The presence of these ripples suggested that the sound source was not merely transmitting through water, but also coupling harmonic energy into the seafloor. Only a massive organism with dense internal architecture could create such an effect. Another disturbing acoustic event occurred along the mid-Atlantic system. Hydrophones captured a scream that seemed to vibrate through the water in layered tiers. The lower tier consisted of a deep groan that oscillated slowly. The upper tiers featured rapid pulses that flickered in frequency as though encoded with information. Each tier traveled outward at different speeds, interacting with the thermocline and bending around seamounts. The behavior resembled multi-channel communication, where one biological output generated several distinct acoustic streams for specific purposes. After the event, a vast region experienced an unexplained biological shift. Entire populations of deep-dwelling fish migrated upward by several hundred meters. Some rose into layers where light penetrating from above was faint but present. These fish rarely ventured beyond such depths, yet their movements suggested an instinctive response to a signal that carried profound environmental significance. Chemical sensors in the same region detected a rise in helium isotopes associated with mantle seepage. This raised the possibility that the organism responsible had disturbed deep channels within the crust. It may have traversed ancient volcanic conduits or passed through zones that connect the upper mantle to the ocean floor. If true, then such a creature interacted not only with the biology of the deep ocean, but also with geological systems far beneath it. Scientists soon classified the recorded scream events into more refined categories based on their acoustic profiles. The first category involved elongated moans with rising pitch. The second category featured descending bursts that resembled collapsing pressure fields. The third category consisted of layered pulses arranged in a grid-like structure. The fourth category displayed explosive signatures detectable mainly through secondary vibrations. Spectral analysis revealed that the harmonics of all categories shared similar spacing ratios. Such consistency implied a shared anatomical design. These organisms might belong to a single lineage or a group derived from a common ancestral form capable of supporting massive internal chambers or resonant networks. Evidence for this lineage surfaced in the Indian system, where a rare scream-like event created a cascade of acoustic reflections across a narrow trench corridor. The reflections revealed a structure traveling at depth that possessed multiple cylindrical regions, resonating at different frequencies simultaneously. These cylinders appeared to shift alignment during movement, altering the harmonic profile of the scream. This behavior suggested purposeful modulation, perhaps to send signals to other organisms. What made the event more unsettling was its impact on the trench environment. Shortly after the scream, sediment layers that had remained undisturbed for centuries shifted in tightly controlled patterns. Samples taken later showed that organic compounds in the sediment had undergone rapid breakdown, releasing nutrients that spread through the water column. Microbial blooms formed within hours. It was as though the scream had triggered a localized ecological reset. The correlation between the screams and biological or geological changes deepened when a new category of sound emerged. Unlike the earlier wailing or groaning profiles, this new sound resembled a distant roar punctuated by pulses that echoed through multiple depth layers. The roar appeared to originate from a source traveling upward from extremely deep regions. Once near a certain depth, the roar ceased, replaced by a series of sharp tones that propagated laterally. Such directionality suggested that the organism had reached a threshold beyond which it altered its vocal output, perhaps to communicate with others at mid-depth. Acoustic triangulation showed that these roars traced a path that intersected with known scream corridors. This indicated that different categories of deep-sea entities might share territories or interact through overlapping cycles. Some may migrate vertically, while others traverse horizontally along ancient geological tracks. The origin of the deepest roars remained beyond reach. No vehicle had ever explored the regions from which these sounds came. Pressures there crushed even advanced unmanned containers. The ocean in these zones remained a blind frontier, where only sound traveled freely. The fact that living creatures inhabited such depths and produced vocalizations strong enough to reach the upper water layers implied adaptations beyond human understanding. A breakthrough occurred when acoustic correlation studies revealed synchronized events. Recordings from the Pacific and Atlantic captured scream-like pulses within minutes of one another. Their profiles were not identical, but sequences within them matched perfectly. These matched sequences repeated across both basins for nearly an hour. The synchronization could not be explained by coincidence, seismic triggers, or hydrothermal activity. The only plausible explanation was coordinated biological behavior spanning thousands of kilometers. If these screams represented communication, then the organisms possessed an ability to broadcast signals across entire ocean basins. They may have formed a global network of deep-sea communication, their calls acting as long-distance messages passed through the water. Further investigation revealed something even more alarming. Following several synchronized scream events, the overall noise level of the ocean dropped. Regions that normally produce constant acoustic hum suddenly went silent. Marine mammals altered their calls. Fish activity decreased. Certain regions went entirely quiet for hours. The silence behaved like a wave that followed the path of the scream events. This suggested a profound influence on the behavior of surrounding life. In some regions, the silence lingered. Hydrophones recorded nearly complete absence of ambient sound. Currents moved without their usual turbulence. The seafloor vibrated only with very soft pulses. These zones developed after nearly every major scream event. They resembled acoustic voids created by creatures capable of manipulating the sound environment. Over time, patterns began to emerge, linking the scream events with broader oceanic changes. Temperature layers responded subtly. Chemical gradients shifted. Sediment profiles altered, and in some regions, deep ocean currents slowed or changed direction. Each scream appeared to serve a function that extended far beyond simple communication. It was as though the organisms were shaping their environment in cycles. Once this possibility became credible, researchers considered an unsettling idea. The scream-like sounds might not be vocal expressions of pain or aggression. They might be part of a sophisticated system of environmental management, a form of biological regulation carried out by organisms that evolved to influence deep ocean ecosystems using sound as a structural tool. This theory gained traction when sediment core samples from multiple trenches revealed periodic chemical patterns that matched the intervals of the recorded scream events. These patterns extended back for hundreds of thousands of years. The screams were not new, they were ancient. They had been part of the deep ocean for longer than any human settlement. Only the intensity had changed. In recent decades, the screams grew louder, more frequent, and more widespread. The largest of them exceeded the bounds of historical acoustic records. Something in the deep ocean was awakening, shifting, or preparing for a new phase of activity. What terrified researchers most was not the power of the screams, but the realization that the world was hearing only the surface of an immense and ancient system. The real question was no longer who is making these screams. The real question was why the calling has begun again. As the catalog of scream-like signatures expanded, researchers began comparing them not only across geographical regions, but also across geological epochs. Ancient sonar logs from the earliest deep ocean experiments were reanalyzed. Even magnetic tape archives stored in forgotten government facilities revealed faint residual oscillations that had been dismissed as interference decades earlier. When enhanced with modern acoustic reconstruction techniques, these old signals revealed recognizable patterns. They matched the same harmonic ratios present in the modern scream events. This discovery implied that the enigmatic deep-sea calls spanned multiple generations of oceanic change. They had persisted through global temperature shifts, tectonic rearrangements, and mass migrations of marine life. The sounds themselves formed a continuous acoustic thread across time, connecting modern oceans with ancient conditions. A new class of recordings soon emerged from hydrophones placed along the Antarctic convergence zone. These devices captured scream-like calls that differed markedly from previous categories. Instead of rising or falling in pitch, these recordings featured slow oscillations that wavered within an extremely narrow frequency band. The oscillations resembled controlled tremors, pulsing with extraordinary regularity. Each pulse contained microstructure that repeated in long cycles. When mapped visually, the sound displayed a pattern that resembled a ripple expanding through concentric rings. The most unusual feature of these oscillations was their stability. They continued for nearly 6 hours without interruption. No known organism possesses the metabolic endurance required to produce such long-form acoustic emissions. The pattern hinted at a being with immense internal energy reserves, or perhaps one that relied on external environmental forces to sustain prolonged vibration. The region reacted noticeably. Ice shelves bordering the convergence zone shifted. Pressure readings near the seafloor changed abruptly, forming pockets of unusual density. Deep currents that normally flowed northward slowed and reoriented. All these alterations occurred in direct synchrony with the sustained oscillations, confirming that the sound source exerted massive influence on its environment. Further spectral analysis revealed that these oscillations possessed secondary harmonic spreading. Some harmonics traveled downward into the abyss, while others traveled upward toward the underside of ice sheets. The upward traveling harmonics caused faint yet measurable flexing of the ice. The entire structure vibrated as though responding to a distant subterranean force. A separate set of recordings came from the Indian high-pressure system. Hydrophones there captured a scream that contained 3 distinct layers. The first layer consisted of a deep growl that pulsed at a subsonic rate. The second layer was a higher resonant pitch that spiraled upward steadily. The third layer consisted of rapid chirping patterns that flickered across the spectrum in bursts. Strangely, the third layer did not propagate evenly. It refracted around unseen objects or density shifts in the water. Such behavior suggested that the organism responsible possessed anatomical structures capable of producing directional acoustic emissions in narrow beams. After this event, the region experienced a complete collapse in local biological noise. All marine life either fled or descended into deeper layers. The silence endured for nearly 2 days before life slowly returned. This response hinted at instinctive avoidance triggered by sound patterns that communicated danger or warned of vast environmental changes. The presence of screams that influenced entire ecosystems raised questions about the anatomical features required to generate such power. Theories began to form. Some proposed that these organisms possessed enormous gas-filled cavities similar to resonance chambers. Others suggested biochemical engines capable of manipulating pressure through rapid contraction cycles. Yet certain recorded frequencies exceeded what even such structures could reasonably produce. This led to the hypothesis that some deep-sea life forms relied on hybrid mechanisms that combined anatomical vibration with environmental manipulation. In this model, the organism did not produce the full sound alone. It initiated resonance within a surrounding volume of water or sediment, using the environment itself as an amplifier. Such a capability would require precise control of chemical gradients, pressure zones, and microstructures within its immediate surroundings. If true, then the screams recorded were not simply vocalizations, but orchestrated events, in which the ocean itself became part of the organism's acoustic system. Further data supported this idea. In one rare event, 2 scream signatures occurred nearly simultaneously in different basins. The first originated in the Atlantic, producing a rising wail with irregular harmonics. The second occurred minutes later in the Pacific, producing a descending moan with perfect harmonic structure. When researchers overlapped the 2 recordings, a remarkable discovery emerged. The 2 sounds formed a combined harmonic envelope that matched the profile of a single larger organism. This suggested that the screams were not isolated calls. They were components of a larger acoustic structure assembled across hemispheric distances. Each organism contributed a segment, creating a globally distributed waveform. When analyzed visually, the combined harmonic form resembled a tidal wave of oscillation stretching across half the planet. Soon afterward, previously dormant hydrothermal vents in several regions began to emit unusual plumes. These plumes contained chemical signatures identical to those found in deep regions where organisms had recently produced scream events. The chemical trails suggested that the sound pulses might stimulate or awaken ancient structures within the seafloor. Some geologists theorized that the organisms interacted with geothermal networks that extended deep into the crust. Their scream-like pulses might activate mineral circulation or influence convective flows. Simultaneously, magnetometric readings revealed faint fluctuations that spread outward from the regions where the deepest screams originated. These magnetic shifts did not resemble tectonic events or solar interference. Instead, they followed the motion of the sound waves. Their intensity increased with harmonic density. This implied that the organisms possessed tissues or internal structures that interacted with magnetic fields. The sounds themselves might carry magnetic signatures, allowing communication to travel across distances unimpeded by physical boundaries. A breakthrough came during the examination of a newly recorded scream with unprecedented clarity. This recording captured not only the main acoustic body, but also multiple faint secondary emissions. These emissions behaved like stable echoes, yet they did not originate from surrounding walls or seabed formations. Instead, they came from within the organism itself. The echoes repeated internal patterns that resembled feedback loops. These loops would require complex internal geometry with isolated chambers connected by narrow conduits. The structure resembled a cathedral of biological resonance. Scientists realized that the terrifying sounds captured represented only the audible portion of a much wider spectrum. Many events involved frequencies too low for human hearing or too high for conventional sensors. Some sounds existed not as continuous waves, but as pulsed vibrations that influenced water density. This suggested an entire domain of communication occurring beyond the reach of human instruments. In the Western Pacific, a massive scream event confirmed the existence of infrasonic patterns extending for hundreds of kilometers. A deep array recorded an infrasonic drift that lasted almost 3 hours. The drift followed an ancient trench corridor. When mapped, the sound formed a wandering curve that resembled the signature of an immense moving body. The intensity of the infrasonic wave indicated an organism larger than any recorded previously. Following this event, seismic sensors detected faint rhythmic tremors along the trench walls. These tremors occurred at depths far too extreme for human observation. Yet their frequency correlated perfectly with the infrasonic drift. In effect, the creature produced both acoustic and tectonic level disturbances simultaneously. As researchers pieced together these findings, a picture began to form. The terrifying screams of the ocean did not originate from random deep-sea beasts suffering or calling out in pain. They belonged to highly specialized organisms capable of manipulating water, sediment, pressure, chemistry, and magnetic fields. These organisms appeared to participate in long-term cycles involving deep ocean structures, geothermal activity, and biological ecosystems. The calls may have served as coordination signals for these cycles. They may have been warnings. They may have been announcements. They may have been part of a ritual that spanned geological ages. The more data accumulated, the clearer one truth became. The screams were not chaotic. As the scream signatures accumulated, specialists in ocean acoustics began reconstructing three-dimensional models of their propagation patterns. These models revealed that many of the most powerful sounds did not radiate outward symmetrically from a central point. Instead, they extended through narrow corridors that traveled along pressure boundaries, thermoclines, and ancient fracture zones beneath the sea floor. These constrained propagation paths indicated that the creatures generating the screams understood the structure of the deep ocean and used it to magnify the reach of their calls. One of the most revealing examples came from a massive ascending tone recorded near the Tonga region. The sound traveled upward through a narrow vertical corridor until it reached a shallow layer where warm and cold waters met. Upon reaching that boundary, the sound split into two separate waves that traveled laterally for hundreds of kilometers. The split formed a resonant arc that passed through 4 hydrophone arrays nearly simultaneously. Analysts determined that only a highly controlled waveform could produce such behavior. Random biological calls do not split into stable parallel paths with identical harmonic layers. The pressure beneath the wave corridor shifted. Instruments recorded changes in density capable of influencing marine migration. Nearby trenches displayed altered current flow that persisted for weeks. These environmental changes suggested that the sound had interacted physically with the water column, not merely passed through it. A second extraordinary event occurred when two scream sources appeared to emit harmonically linked tones across opposite sides of the Pacific. The first tone originated near a deep mountain chain where earlier anomalies had been observed. The second came from a distant region near the Panthalassa fracture system. Both tones ascended slowly, building energy at identical intervals. When mapped together, their envelope formed a perfect mirror image. No known natural phenomenon can generate such symmetry across such vast distances unless guided by biological timing mechanisms. Following this synchronous event, several regions experienced a rapid thinning of mid-depth marine life. Species that normally occupied hundreds of meters scattered abruptly. Because mid-depth ecosystems rely heavily on consistent acoustic cues, researchers concluded that the twin screams interrupted the sensory environment so profoundly that entire food webs temporarily collapsed. Meanwhile, other monitoring systems recorded additional evidence of coordination. Magnetometers placed on floating arrays detected subtle oscillations that matched the frequencies of specific scream types. These oscillations pulsed through the water for hours after the sound event had ended. The pattern resembled a magnetic imprint, as if the organism had left a lingering signature in the geomagnetic field. This was especially alarming because the field responded only weakly to most biological activity. The presence of such a signature implied that the organism either possessed tissues containing magnetoreceptive materials or generated electromagnetic pulses during vocalization. The most unusual reaction happened in the eastern Atlantic. After a series of short pulse screams, the surface of the water above the origin zone darkened. The darkness was not caused by sediment or pollution. Instead, it resulted from the sudden collapse of a massive plankton bloom. The bloom did not disperse, it simply died at once. The collapse created a visible shadow as dead plankton sank, leaving a distinct absence of light scattering in the water. The timing matched the acoustic events within a margin of seconds. This raised the possibility that the sound pulses transmitted signals that directly disrupted or halted biological function in microorganisms. Such precision and scale forced researchers to consider the possibility that the scream-producing creatures possessed a biological role extending beyond mere communication. Their calls appeared to regulate deep ocean ecosystems, shaping the distribution of nutrients, controlling microbial activity, and affecting the behavior of large marine species. The organisms may have evolved as part of a fundamental ocean-shaping process that maintains the stability of abyssal systems. Evidence for this emerged from ancient sediment cores taken from the deepest trenches. These cores contained chemical banding patterns reflecting periodic environmental resets. The intervals between these resets matched the estimated frequency of major scream cycles derived from acoustic archives. In each cycle, certain compounds spiked in concentration before declining, indicating that biological processes influenced chemical availability at planetary scales. The screams likely played a role in triggering or regulating these processes across millennia. The next major discovery originated from a newly deployed deep-sea resonance grid. This grid used carefully positioned sensors to triangulate acoustic sources across a large trench system. During a powerful scream event, the grid captured a detailed holographic model of the sound. The model revealed elongated structures embedded within the waveform itself. These structures resembled repeating motifs in musical notation, except they occurred within an acoustic spectrogram. The motifs appeared too deliberate to be accidental. Each repeated pattern represented a stable portion of the waveform, suggesting that the sound carried encoded information. The idea of encoded biological messages within deep-sea screams remained controversial, yet the data aligned with the concept. The motifs displayed mathematical relationships consistent with communication signals. Their complexity exceeded that of whale communication by several orders of magnitude. Some sequences contained symmetries reminiscent of fractal geometry. These were not random emissions, they were orchestrated. Complementary evidence arose from chemical changes recorded shortly after the encoded screams. Dissolved nitrogen levels increased. Carbon cycling accelerated. Oxygen concentrations shifted in distinct layers as microbes consumed or released gases at altered rates. These changes aligned with known environmental feedback loops. It appeared that the encoded scream pulses initiated a chain reaction across chemical cycles, possibly part of a natural rhythm that maintained ocean stability. As data compiled, patterns indicated that the scream events clustered along a global network of ancient tectonic boundaries. These boundaries acted like acoustic highways. Sound traveled through them with minimal energy loss, allowing a single emission to span distances greater than any biological call known to science. The organisms using these passages demonstrated precise understanding of the environment. They appeared to follow geological formations with intent, forming a coordinated distribution that encircled the planet. Simultaneous events across distant basins suggested that these creatures formed a planetary-scale system. Vibrations from their screams shaped deep ocean currents, moved sediment, revived dormant vent fields, and influenced entire ecosystems. Their calls were not incidental noise. They were the heartbeat of an ancient and immense biological infrastructure. One of the most mysterious discoveries came from a remote array near the Kermadec region. This array recorded a scream of unprecedented strength. The sound rose from extreme depths, built to impossible intensity, then vanished instantly. The sudden disappearance produced a vacuum-like silence that spread across the water. Within this silence, sensors captured faint mechanical clicking emanating from the deep. The clicks formed repeating patterns, each separated by long stretches of stillness. No marine life responded to the clicks. They existed within an acoustic void created by the scream. It was as if the creature responsible had emptied the local soundscape and replaced it with its own precise rhythm. Pressure readings revealed another detail. During the scream event, the water density oscillated in perfect synchronization with the sound. These oscillations spread through sediment and rock, forming ordered waves that resembled controlled seismic pulses. The pattern indicated that the organism interacted with the earth itself, not only the water. It manipulated pressure in ways that affected both biological and geological structures. The aftermath was even stranger. 2 days later, previously inactive hydrothermal vents in the region began releasing heat and minerals. The timing suggested the scream triggered activation of the vents. Such a result implies that the organism possessed the ability to affect geothermal systems. Perhaps the screams acted as catalysts, opening or closing vent channels and influencing the flow of heat deep within the earth. As these findings converged, the question shifted. No longer did researchers wonder what sort of creature could produce such terrifying sounds. Instead, they sought to understand why the screams were increasing in frequency and intensity. Archived data revealed that the cycle of deep-sea screams appeared to lengthen and contract according to changes in global climate, ocean temperature, and tectonic activity. During periods of relative stability, the screams occurred infrequently. During transitions, they grew more frequent. In the present era, with rapid shifts in temperature and altered current structures, the scream cycle accelerated at an unprecedented rate. This raised the possibility that the organisms were reacting to modern environmental upheaval. Their screams may be attempts to restore equilibrium within the deep ocean or signals that a long dormant cycle was being reactivated. Some analysts suggested that the organisms themselves were beginning a migratory or reproductive phase that occurred only during rare planetary conditions. Others proposed a more unsettling idea. The screaming was not directed at the ocean. It was directed at the world above. Perhaps the creatures were not only reacting to environmental change, perhaps they were warning of coming shifts in the deep that would soon affect the land. As the ocean continued to tremble under the weight of these colossal sounds, the final unsettling realization emerged in scientific discussions. Humanity had always imagined the deep ocean as a silent world. In truth, the deep was alive with ancient voices. And those voices had begun calling out again with increasing urgency. As the deep ocean continued to broadcast its ancient voices, global observation grids revealed patterns too extensive and consistent to dismiss as coincidence. The scream-like emissions no longer appeared random or isolated. They aligned with a planetary structure that connected trenches, fracture zones, extinct volcanic fields, abyssal plains, and ancient mantle channels. This structure formed a hidden biological circuit spanning the entire oceanic world. One of the most striking revelations emerged from the study of harmonic echoes that persisted long after major scream events. These echoes traveled through the deep like slow-moving shadows. In many regions, they remained detectable for days before fading. Their persistence indicated extreme energy efficiency within the original calls. The echoes did not decay according to normal physical rules. Instead, they diminished in discrete steps, suggesting that the water or sediment absorbed the sound in quantized layers shaped by the geometry of the source. When mapped globally, the echo patterns formed repeating spirals around certain deep points that matched the greatest scream concentrations. These spirals resembled the patterns observed in ancient geological banding found within the deepest sections of the crust. In other words, the modern screams followed the same dormant spiral pathways that once guided mineral movement through the planet millions of years ago. It became clear that the entities creating the sounds were not simply wandering through the ocean. They followed the buried memory of the Earth itself. During a major event near the Aleutian system, 3 distinct scream signatures erupted at precisely calculated intervals. The first traveled upward through a massive water column, triggering sudden shifts in suspended particulate matter. The second traveled laterally along a deep tectonic seam. The third traveled downward into a mantle-linked trough, where oceanic crust met underlying rock. Each path represented a different dimension of environmental influence. The upward scream altered biological layers. The lateral scream changed current patterns and water density. The downward scream interacted with rock. Following this triple event, satellites detected a region-wide expansion of warm water near the surface, while deep sensors recorded cooling at extreme depths. These inverse changes indicated a forced vertical redistribution of heat. The screams had acted as regulators, pushing warm water upward and drawing cooler water downward. This reset produced a temporary stabilization of temperature anomalies that had been growing during prior months. The realization that the scream producers could alter thermal structures at such scale forced researchers to confront the vast scope of the organisms. They were no longer viewed as simple deep-sea giants. They had become agents of planetary temperature control, or participants in cycles that prevented destabilization of ocean energy systems. Chemical data reinforced this idea. After several massive scream events, sensors recorded unusual shifts in dissolved gases and mineral concentrations. Certain chemical pairs changed in predictable ratios, indicating controlled mixing of deep and shallow water layers. These ratios matched patterns found in ancient sediment cores. The screams appeared to be part of a natural but long-hidden process, responsible for maintaining chemical equilibrium across the abyss. The creatures performed environmental functions traditionally attributed to tectonic activity, geothermal flux, and slow current drift. Except these functions were biological. The deep had always been alive, and its life had always shaped the oceans in ways the surface world never recognized. Further confirmation came from the discovery of long-duration infrasonic tremors recorded in the southern system. These tremors repeated every 15 hours for nearly 2 weeks. Each tremor began with a soft rumble, climbed into a sustained moaning sound, then dissolved into harmonic dust. This sequence resembled a breathing cycle for something colossal. The tremors produced global deep ocean pressure adjustments that redistributed dense water masses between basins. Marine scientists realized they were witnessing a slow cycle of inhalation and exhalation from an organism or group of organisms whose scale defied all previous biological concepts. The simultaneous collapse of several plankton fields following the tremors reinforced the idea that these cycles initiated regular resets of biological density. Some deep-water species depended on such resets to prevent collapse of nutrient webs. Without these cycles, entire abyssal ecosystems might stagnate. A few weeks later, something unprecedented occurred. A set of synchronized scream events erupted across every major ocean basin in a single 24-hour period. Each event followed the same spectral pattern. Each contained the same rising harmonic crest. Each ended with the same abrupt collapse into silence. This global synchronization had no historical precedent. Even ancient acoustic traces found in cores did not indicate worldwide coordination. The silence that followed the global scream sequence lasted nearly 13 hours. During this time, ambient underwater noise fell to levels below anything previously recorded. All marine mammals ceased vocalization. Fish migration halted. Current turbulence diminished. The entire ocean appeared to fall into suspension. During that silence, gravity sensors recorded slight fluctuations in ocean mass distribution. Water shifted toward deeper basins in tiny increments not visible at the surface. These movements suggested a coordinated environmental realignment. At the 13th hour, a single event broke the silence. A low resonance emerged from the deepest known regions. It was not a scream. It resembled a settling hum, a long, sustained vibration that moved through water and rock with steady precision. The hum lasted for 87 minutes. During this time, chemical gradients stabilized. Temperatures equalized across large vertical ranges. Even minor earthquakes in subduction zones paused temporarily. It was as though the world held its breath. When the hum finally faded, the entire ocean resumed its natural motion. Currents returned, marine species resumed their activities, the acoustic void dissolved, the planet exhaled. Analysis of the global scream sequence and the final hum pointed toward a single conclusion. The deep ocean organisms were not acting randomly. They were performing a synchronized environmental adjustment cycle. This cycle, which may have existed since the earliest ages of complex life, appeared to activate under extreme stress. Modern climate changes, shifting current patterns and temperature anomalies, may have triggered a planetary correction sequence carried out by abyssal organisms that evolved to maintain long-term stability. These creatures were not merely producing terrifying sounds, they were maintaining the life support systems of the planet. Their screams, once interpreted as horror, now resembled the sound of ancient machinery functioning at impossible depths. Yet one element remained unresolved. The global cycle did not end with the final hum. Instead, deep ocean sensors detected something else. A massive low-frequency signature began moving through the deepest trenches. It traveled slowly, deliberately, and with greater power than any previously recorded organism. Only one such signature existed. It matched the monstrous acoustic entity whose earliest recordings had confused the very first ocean monitoring systems decades earlier. For years, its identity had been unknown. It had never produced rising screams or collapsing moans. It slept in silence for centuries. It moved only during the largest geophysical transitions in the history of the planet. Now it was awake. The signature traveled along a path that aligned with the oldest tectonic scars in the oceanic crust. As it moved, all other deep-sea organisms fell silent again. No more screams emerged, no more pulses. No more coordinated signals. The abyss listened. Researchers soon realized why. The gigantic entity represented the apex of the acoustic system. All other scream-producing organisms acted as regulators, but this one acted as the final arbiter of the cycle. Its presence meant that the deepest correction process had reached its final phase. Yet this phase had never been witnessed in the age of humanity. Nobody knew what it signified. The signature continued moving until it reached the deepest point of the planet. There it stopped. Sensors went dark one after another. A pressure wave rose through the water column, not violent but immense. Chemical layers shifted. Magnetic lines trembled. Even the crust beneath the trench recorded a soft tremor that lasted only a second. Then nothing. Absolute stillness returned to the abyss. After 3 days, ambient ocean noise resumed everywhere. Life returned to normal patterns. No further screams occurred. The ancient cycle had ended. The deep had fallen back into waiting silence. What the giant entity did at the bottom of the world remained unknown. What purpose the global scream cycle served remained partly mysterious. Why the organisms had awakened with such intensity in modern times remained unanswered. Yet one truth became undeniable. The most terrifying sounds of the ocean were not signs of danger. They were signs of maintenance. Signs of regulation, signs of ancient life forms performing tasks older than continents. The deep did not scream out of fear or violence. The deep screamed because the planet required it. And long after humanity has vanished, long after surface life has changed into something unrecognizable, the ocean will still echo with those colossal voices. They will rise again when needed, and the world will tremble as the deep speaks. We upload new videos every single day, so make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss what's next. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, it really helps the channel grow. Tell us in the comments what you'd like to see next. Your ideas might be in our next upload. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of our community. Stay tuned, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next video.